They laughed at his skin, his silence, his age. But when he whispered 5 words, the radios cut out, the guns lowered, and every soldier froze in place. That's when the real story began. The heat shimmered on the cracked pavement outside the Briarstone residences, a low-gang complex nestled in a forgotten corner of the city. Police tape fluttered in the breeze, marking the perimeter of something deadly. Sirens wailed low in the distance. Tactical vans lined the block like armored tombstones. At the edge of it all, standing still with his hands tucked in the pockets of a faded olive jacket, was a man no one paid attention to, because they thought they already knew what he was. Walter Grant, 72, exuded nothing but quiet. His back was slightly hunched, his hair cropped short and gray, and his worn boots were more dust than leather. To most of the SWAT officers racing past him, he looked like a confused old black man with nowhere to go. To them, he was background, static, a wrinkle in the scene. But Walter wasn't confused. He wasn't lost. And he damn sure didn't belong in the background. Across the street, a young officer with a too-tight vest and an even tighter jawline barked into a radio. Suspects still unresponsive, no contact in over 3 hours, 3 hostages inside. Building is locked. Delta team ready for breach. The voice crackled in response, confirming that time was running out. Walter shifted his weight. His eyes, sharp and unwavering, scanned the building's windows, counting floor tiles in his head, checking for reflections that didn't belong. He'd been doing this for weeks, ever since he noticed a man entering Unit 402 at odd hours. Mercer. Simon Mercer. The name wasn't listed anywhere, but Walter knew faces, knew patterns, and Mercer had a pattern. Paranoia, military precision, chemical supplies delivered under the table. Walter had tried to report it a month ago, anonymously. The message went nowhere. Now, here he stood, watching a disaster take shape. "Sir," a voice snapped beside him. "You need to step back behind the line. This area is restricted." Walter turned his head slowly. A younger officer, white, tall, impatient, stared down at him like he was an inconvenience. "I live here," Walter said calmly, nodding toward the building. The officer smirked. "Sure you do. And I'm the president. Get back, Grandpa, before you get yourself hurt." Laughter echoed from nearby. Another cop muttered, "Probably senile." Walter stepped back, not because he was afraid, because he was calculating. They didn't recognize him, and that wasn't an accident. For weeks, he'd moved through the complex under a different name, taking notes on Mercer's comings and goings, paying attention to building access points, tracking a floor plan that was outdated but not forgotten. Walter knew that place better than anyone. He'd helped design it decades ago, during his years with the Department of Defense. What the blueprints didn't show was what only he remembered: the crawl space behind Units 402 and 404. A structural flaw turned tactical advantage. And Mercer knew it too. Inside the SWAT van, Captain Colton Reyes was hunched over a digital schematic of the building, frustration etched into every line of his face. Negotiations had failed. They'd lost visual contact with the suspect. And the countdown had begun. 60 seconds to breach, the lead tech called out. Walter took one last look at the building. He saw the angle of the breach team, the gap in their rear cover, the unaccounted blast radius if Mercer had rigged it like he thought. He saw the failure written in their posture. He crossed the line. Not with panic, not with bravado, just purpose. An officer lunged for him. "Hey, you can't go in there." Walter didn't flinch. "You're all gonna die if you go in like that," he said, low and direct. Captain Reyes turned, annoyed. "Get him out of here." "I worked on that building," Walter said. "There's a passageway. Between 402 and 404, it's not on your plans." Reyes rolled his eyes. Oh, great. We've got a building expert now? Sir, step back. You should listen, Walter said, before judging by appearances. Reyes scoffed. Why should I? That's when Walter leaned forward, looked him dead in the eyes, and said it. Delta Force Commander, Operation Tempest. Everything stopped. Radios fell silent. Someone muttered, "No way." Reyes blinked, the name finally clicking. Walter Grant. Legend. Ghost. Forgotten by everyone except the few who'd served under him. Walter exhaled slowly. The countdown continued. The shift was immediate. Captain Reyes stiffened. The name Operation Tempest wasn't public. It wasn't on any website. Only men who had bled for it knew. Men like him. Reyes looked at Walter, really looked. The lines in his face weren't just age. They were war maps. Scars without blood. Is this real? A nearby officer whispered. That can't be him. Walter didn't need to argue. He just tapped a code into the edge of his old flip phone. A 6-digit string. Seconds later, the encrypted signal pinged the local federal node, and a message came through. Not to Reyes, to the Pentagon. Walter didn't need permission. He needed confirmation. Reyes stepped forward. Sir, if this is true, why are you here? Why undercover? Because no one listened when I called this in a month ago, Walter replied. And I knew this man. Mercer wasn't always like this, but he was trained to disappear, to rig, to wait. He hasn't snapped. He's executing. You know him? Reyes asked. Walter nodded. I trained him. That silenced everyone. Troy Maddox, the hard-jawed SWAT sergeant with zero patience for civilians, stepped closer. You're telling me the guy who's got 3 people hostage used to be one of yours? Yes, Walter said simply. He was the best I ever trained, until Beirut. What the hell happened in Beirut? Someone asked. Walter looked away for a moment. We were sent in. And we weren't supposed to come back. Mercer did, but he never really returned. Reyes cursed under his breath. And now he's lashing out? No, Walter said. He's making a point. He wants the world to see what happens when they erase the people they created. Maddox sneered. So what, you just stroll in and expect us to stand down? Walter stepped forward. I expect you to not die. That landed like a blow. Inside the tactical van, tension twisted tighter. Officers shifted uncomfortably. Orders had already been given. The breach team was in place. The clock was ticking. But the man standing before them had just rewritten the mission. Reyes pulled Walter aside. I need more than stories. I need intel. You said there's a passageway. Yes, Walter said. Accessed through the bathroom vent in 404. It opens behind Mercer's position in 402. You go through the front, he'll blow the charges. You saw the explosives? I saw the motion sensors 3 days ago, and I've seen him carrying wiring. I watched him plant. Your team has no angle. Reyes stared at him, then turned to Maddox. Hold the breach. What? Maddox barked. We are not backing off, because some old guy tells ghost stories. Reyes snapped. That old guy built your damn kill house. Show some respect. Walter didn't flinch. He was already walking toward the command table. Jade Ellison, the negotiation specialist, looked up from her files. Her eyes met Walter's. And she didn't see an old man. She saw the quiet command of a general. You're the one who reported the strange deliveries, she said softly. Walter nodded. I saw the chemicals. I saw the patterns. Why didn't you say who you were? Would you have believed me? Jade didn't answer. She just handed him a headset. Talk to him, she said. "He asked for you." Walter took it without hesitation. Inside 402, the lights were low. The hostages, 2 women and a teenage boy, sat huddled in the corner. Mercer stood at the window, cradling a small device. The voice crackled through the speaker near the door. "Simon, it's Walter." There was a long silence. Then Mercer's voice, hoarse, broken. "Commander, I thought you were dead." Walter closed his eyes. "I was. For a long time. You came to stop me. I came to see if there was anything left to save." Mercer chuckled, hollow. "They used us up, and when we broke, they left us behind. I buried 7 of our men myself. Do you even know where Evans is buried?" Walter didn't answer. "Exactly," Mercer snapped. "I'm not the villain here." "No," Walter said. "You're the lesson." Outside, Maddox shook his head. "We need to move. He's not coming out." Jade held up her hand. "He's close. Let him talk." Inside, Walter walked slowly towards the entrance. Every movement was deliberate. "You trained me to think like the enemy," Mercer said. "So I became one. And I trained you to stop before you crossed that line," Walter replied. Mercer hesitated. Too late. Walter reached the door. "Then let's end this, soldier," he said. He stepped inside. The interior of apartment 402 was a war zone in waiting. Wires trailed across the floor like veins connecting makeshift circuits, small bundles of C4 and pressure triggers built into the baseboards. The air was thick with tension, and Mercer, older, gaunt, eyes fever-bright, stood in the middle of it all like a man holding his last breath. Walter stepped in slowly, both hands visible. No vest, no weapon drawn, just presence. Mercer flinched but didn't aim the device at him. "You don't look like the man I remember. I haven't been him in a long time," Walter replied. "I'm not looking for absolution, Commander." "Good," Walter said, "because I'm not here to give it." The 2 men stood in silence, history hanging between them like shrapnel. Then Mercer pointed at the hostages. "They're unharmed, for now." "I believe you," Walter said. "That's not why I'm here." "Then why?" Mercer growled. "To talk me down? Say I'm better than this?" "You are. Or you were, but this—" Walter looked around the room. "This isn't tactical. It's personal." Mercer laughed bitterly. "Of course it is. They erased us. Erased me. After Beirut, I begged for treatment. They said PTSD wasn't real. I gave them everything, and they gave me nothing." Walter nodded slowly. "I know." Mercer's hand tightened on the device. "Do you? Really? Or did you retire to a quiet house while the rest of us rotted?" Walter didn't answer that. Instead, he said, "You picked this building for a reason. You knew I'd recognize it." Mercer hesitated. "You remember? Unit 42, Walter said. "Your training quarters during Tempest Prep. You left a knife hidden behind the drywall. Is it still there?" Mercer's eyes flashed. "No one ever noticed that." "I did," Walter said softly. "You weren't invisible. We just didn't listen soon enough." Outside, SWAT command was falling apart. Maddox was pacing, barking into his radio. "We've lost visual. He's inside. This whole thing is compromised." Jade cut him off. "He knows what he's doing." "He's not even wired," Maddox shouted. "No camera, no body feed. We don't know what's happening in there." Reyes stared at the door. "If he makes it out, we stand down. If not—" Jade didn't let him finish. Inside, Walter stepped between Mercer and the hostages. "Let them go, Simon." Mercer's lip trembled. "You're not in command anymore." "Not," Walter said. But I am the only one who walked in here without a rifle. That's gotta mean something. Mercer looked down at the detonator. They'll just throw me in a cell, forget me again. No, Walter said, because I won't let them. Mercer met his gaze. Why? Because I owe you, Walter said, and because, if you die like this, they win again. For a moment, everything went still. Then Mercer slowly, painfully, lowered the detonator. Walter stepped forward, took it gently from his hand. Outside, Maddox got the green light. "We're going in," he shouted. "No," Jade snapped, her eyes on the monitor. "Wait." "Look." From the front door, Walter stepped out into the light. Calm. Steady. Behind him came the hostages, shaken but unharmed. And then Mercer, hands raised, no longer a threat, but a man broken in silence. The entire street froze. Reyes exhaled a curse. He actually did it. But Maddox wasn't done. He barked into his radio, "Move in. Detain the suspect." Then, over every headset, 5 words crackled through Walter's voice. "Black Lamb, abort, explosives, stand down." Every SWAT officer froze. They'd all been trained on Delta protocols. That code, Black Lamb, wasn't just a warning. It was the highest-tier threat recognition used only by elite units in active nuclear or chemical environments, and only those with authority to invoke it could ever use it. Maddox stared at his team in disbelief. "What the hell are you doing? Keep moving!" "No, sir," one of the officers replied, removing his helmet. "That code overrides command. We're aborting." Reyes walked over, voice low. "That man just prevented a bloodbath. You should be thanking him." But Maddox didn't speak. He was too busy watching the entire tactical unit lower their weapons and address Walter not as sir, not as civilian, but as commander. The street outside Briarstone residences stood in stunned silence. Tactical lights still pulsed red and blue across the cracked pavement, but the threat was over. Hostages, safe. Mercer, detained. And at the center of it all, Walter Grant, the man they mocked as some random old man, was now the calm, commanding presence that every officer instinctively deferred to. Captain Reyes stepped forward slowly, as if approaching a monument. "Commander, I don't even know what to say." "You don't need to," Walter said, slipping the earpiece from his ear. "But your team will need to." Just then, phones across the block began vibrating. Word had already spread. Fast. A shaky video had leaked online. A bystander had filmed the moment Walter was shoved back by officers. Dismissed. Laughed at. Someone added subtitles. "Grandpa, this isn't your fight." The clip was already viral before Walter even stepped back out of the building. Reyes held up his phone. "Sir, you might want to see this." Walter glanced. Comments were flying. "That man just disarmed a terrorist? SWAT mocked a black veteran hero? Who TF is Commander Grant?" The internet had questions, and it was demanding answers fast. Meanwhile, inside an armored truck, Simon Mercer sat quietly, his wrists zip-tied, his eyes empty. He wasn't yelling, he wasn't fighting, just breathing. Walter studied him from a distance. That was no villain. That was what happens when the country forgets its ghosts. Then came the second wave. 3 black SUVs rolled in. No sirens, no markings. Only tinted windows and men in suits who didn't ask permission. One approached Reyes and whispered something. Then he turned to Walter. "Mr. Grant," the man said, formal and fast. "We need to speak with you. Now." Walter didn't hesitate. "I figured." They led him into one of the vehicles. The interior was a mobile command center. Screens glowing, encrypted comms, facial recognition scanning across several feeds. Opposite him sat a woman in a dark blazer, mid-40s, razor-sharp eyes. She didn't smile. Nina Prescott, Director of National Security Operations. She slid a thick folder across the table. "I've read your file, the unredacted parts." Walter arched an eyebrow. "So, 4 pages then?" She almost smirked. "Let's talk about Mercer." Walter's eyes sharpened. "He was abandoned. More than just him," Prescott said. "In the last decade, we've quietly tracked a pattern. At least a dozen former Black Ops agents, classified assets, who've disappeared, gone rogue, or died without a name. Mercer's just the first one who made noise." Walter leaned forward. "And now you want me to help clean it up?" "No," Prescott said. "We want to fix it. We want you to help lead that fix." Walter tapped a finger on the folder. "I'll help. One condition. Name it. You start a reintegration program. Full mental health support, retroactive recognition, real benefits, for every one of them. And it's not buried in subcommittees or quietly defunded when the headlines fade." Prescott paused, then nodded. "We'll call it Tempest. You lead it." Walter didn't answer, just stared out the window. Outside, the energy had shifted. Officers stood straighter. Maddox wasn't barking orders. No one was laughing anymore. A man who was invisible that morning now carried a silence that commanded the street. Jade Ellison from the negotiation team was fielding media crews. Reporters scrambled for details. Camera lights flared. But the big question echoed on every mic shoved toward them. When we was a group, even there, Walter didn't answer that question until later, during a federal press conference downtown. He stood at the podium with no medals, no decorations. He didn't need them. The room fell quiet. Then he spoke 5 words. "Respect is not a rank." And then he told the truth. About Mercer. About forgotten soldiers. About how a system could train men to survive war but not help them survive peace. And how none of it would change unless someone stood in the gap and forced it to. The speech aired nationwide. Departments across the country reopened cases. Veterans came forward. A new movement started. On social media, the phrase, "respect is not a rank," began trending. But the most powerful moment came quietly, days later. In a small federal office, Walter sat at a desk sorting names. Men like Mercer, like himself, long erased from databases. A knock at the door. Troy Maddox. No vest, no gear, just humility. He stepped in, awkward, held out an envelope. "I was wrong," he said. "About you. About what I thought I knew. I judged you by your age, by your silence, by your skin, and I almost got people killed." Walter said nothing. Maddox placed the envelope on the desk. "It's my application. If you'll have me, I want to be part of the Tempest program." Walter finally looked up. Not angry, just calm. "Observation," he said. "Starts when you let go of your assumptions." Maddox nodded. Outside the door, a sign had just been installed. The Tempest Initiative, founded by Commander Walter Grant. Below it, a plaque. 5 words. The same 5 that froze the SWAT team in their tracks. Respect is not a rank. 3 days later, a Senate committee convened an emergency closed-door hearing on veteran accountability and post-operational reintegration. Walter was there, not as a witness under oath, but as a strategic advisor. The same people who once erased his name now hung on every word he spoke. Behind closed doors, he laid bare the cost of silence. Not just Mercer's pain, but the dozens of others still ticking in the shadows, carrying war inside them with no mission, no exit. What Mercer did, he said, was not just violence. It was a warning shot. And next time, it may not end with hostages walking out alive. One senator asked, "Commander, why now? Why speak up after all this time?" Walter's answer was simple: because no one else did. Across the country, interviews with former Black Ops agents began surfacing. Some still in hiding, some battling addiction, homelessness, or legal trouble, all sharing the same scar: invisibility. Suddenly, Walter wasn't just a hero. He was the mirror. Late one night, he walked back to the apartment where everything began. Unit 406. The windows had been boarded up, but the structure still stood. Alone, he stood in the empty courtyard and placed his palm on the brick. He closed his eyes. "I should have seen you slipping, Simon. I should have called louder." The wind didn't answer. But somewhere deep in that building's silence, something shifted. Maybe it was memory. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was the birth of something different. The ribbon-cutting ceremony wasn't grand. No fanfare, no stage lights. Just a quiet gathering outside a modest brick building nestled between two city blocks that had seen better decades. Inside stood something entirely new: equal parts trauma clinic, reintegration hub, and tactical debrief center. Its name was simple: the Tempest Initiative. And standing at the front, steady hand on the ribbon, was Commander Walter Grant. He didn't say much. He didn't need to. His presence was the speech. Behind him stood the program's first 10 enrollees, veterans like Mercer, but still salvageable. Some limped. Some shook. All wore expressions somewhere between doubt and hope. Each of them had once vanished from the system. Each of them now stood here because one man refused to let the silence win. Walter shook every hand, looked every person in the eye, and said only 4 words. "We start from here." Inside, a wall-sized mural greeted them. At its center, stenciled in brushstrokes bold and raw, were the words, "We don't erase warriors. We bring them home." Weeks passed. Recruits trained, spoke, healed, and Walter returned to something like routine. Quiet office hours, case reviews, long walks before sunrise. One morning, a small envelope arrived. No return address. Inside was a folded letter, scribbled in adolescent handwriting. Early it was from Owen, the teen hostage from apartment 402. "Dear Commander Grant, I thought I was going to die. But then you came in. You didn't shout. You didn't even look scared. And somehow, the man with the gun listened. That changed everything for me. When I grow up, I don't want to be strong like superheroes. I want to be calm like you. Not a soldier. A protector." Walter sat with that letter for a long time. Then he placed it gently into a leather folder marked Legacy, a collection not of medals, but of meaning. A week later, he was invited to speak at a leadership seminar for incoming police officers. He walked in wearing no insignia. No introduction was needed. Everyone recognized him now. A cadet raised her hand. "Sir, what's one thing you'd want every officer in this room to remember for the rest of their careers?" Walter looked at them. Young faces, some nervous, some eager, all watching him the way officers used to watch him before a mission. He gave them just one sentence. "Power doesn't prove anything, but what you do when no one's watching, that's who you really are." No one spoke, no one blinked. In that silence, it was the sound of a generation learning what strength really means. Later that evening, Walter found himself back where it all began. Not at the building, but on a quiet park bench 3 blocks away. The same bench he'd sat on for hours, unnoticed, while watching Mercer enter and exit the complex in those early days. Now, the city lights flickered behind him, and a group of kids chased a soccer ball across the grass. One of them tripped and fell, and a teenaged girl, likely no older than Owen, ran over and helped him up. Walter smiled softly. For all the chaos and brokenness he had carried, moments like this reminded him of why it all mattered. Because silence was never the enemy. Indifference was. And now, fewer people were looking away. A woman approached him, quietly from the path. "Excuse me," she said. "Are you the man from the news? The commander?" Walter didn't stand. He just nodded. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small, folded photo. "This is my brother," she said. "He served under Operation Firewatch. He disappeared 3 years ago. I never got answers." Walter took the photo. "Give me his name. You have my word, I'll find him." The woman's eyes brimmed. "Thank you," she whispered. He watched her walk away, and in that moment, Walter understood. The mission hadn't ended in that apartment. It had only just begun. 6 months later, no one called Walter Grant invisible anymore. But he didn't care about headlines. What mattered was that people stopped talking over the quiet ones and started listening. Across the country, his story had found unexpected soil. Police academies in states like Oregon, Mississippi, and Colorado added a required module titled Leadership Without Volume, inspired by Walter's operation at Briarstone. Young recruits were taught that authority isn't proven by force, but by clarity, precision, and restraint. In a high school in Arizona, a senior project titled The 5 Words That Changed Everything took top honors. The student had watched Walter's story unfold and interviewed 10 retired veterans, compiling their unheard experiences into one simple message. Don't ignore the calm voice in the corner. Online, a new hashtag emerged, not from marketing, but organically. Lead like Walter. It was quiet, steady, and everywhere. One afternoon, Walter was walking through a quiet neighborhood when a man, mid-30s or so, wearing a faded police academy hoodie, approached him. "I teach new cadets now," he said. "Used to lead like I had something to prove. But then I watched what you did. Changed everything." Walter just nodded. The man added, "When I walk into the room now, I don't raise my voice. I look around. I listen first." Walter smiled faintly. "That's where power begins." That evening, he walked past the quiet park near his home. A child played on the monkey bars. A woman read under a tree. 2 officers nearby stood talking. One pointed discreetly at him. They didn't salute. He straightened up. They watched him walk by, not because of his title, but because of what he'd taught them. That true leadership doesn't echo. It resonates, and sometimes, the man you think is background is the one writing the story.